Hi, I'm Ed Merrison from CellarHand. I'm here in the vineyard with Will Byron, 1/3 of Onannon, of course, with Kaspar, Hermann and Sam Middleton, who aren't obviously here. We've just been looking at a couple of wedge-tailed eagles back in the background over the bay, flying around, having the time of their life, and kind of wishing that we were up there with them actually. But we're not, we're down here, and the good news is that we've got some wine with us. This is the 2019 single vineyard Red Hill Pinot from Will and the guys at Onannon. We've had a look at the Chardonnay and the Gippsland single vineyard Pinot as well before this. So Will, 2019 first of all on the Mornington Peninsula, what can you tell us about that pre-COVID harvest that we've probably all forgotten about now?
A lot of human contact, a lot of hugging, kissing when required. 2019 was a warmer year, so things really picked up and sort of got ripening a little bit earlier than the previous couple of years. So a little bit more of a fruit forward year. So this wine we picked probably a week earlier than on average. So it's typically one of the first vineyards to come off on the Mornington Peninsula for table red.
Yeah, I remember that summer we had, you know, the spikes were there. It's sort of the end of January, I think, wasn't it? So it did cool down a little bit. You know, it wasn't outrageous the whole season. It was more that kind of summer spike, wasn't it?
Yeah, you're right. And it's an unirrigated vineyard, so it started to sort of show the signs that, I mean, there was flavours there, and it showed the signs that I don't think we were going to get much more out of it. So we picked it a little bit earlier than we had in the past, and I'm pretty happy we did, because it's already sort of showing, you know, sort of more forward fruit than I think is typical for this wine. But I think with that comes some, I guess, some riper tannin as well, and a sweeter mid palate, which is working pretty well with it at the moment.
Yeah, right. There's a few. I suppose. I mean, obviously from Leongatha to Mornington Peninsula, as the crow flies, it's not massively far. But we're just talking about an enormous difference between these two single vineyard wines. One from Leongatha and Gippsland. This one from Red Hill. We've looked at the Leongatha just now. That super red fruited, kind of quite delicate looking nose with that wild red berry kind of palate.
Yes.
And very long and not exactly linear, because there's plenty of presence in the mid palate there, but at the same time compared to this I feel like a completely different shape and set of aromatics. What do you sort of see and what do you look for in this wine in terms of its texture and flavour profile?
Yeah, well, it's I mean, there's vast differences in the winemaking. So with Gippsland we typically destem, in fact we always destem, whereas this vineyard in Red Hill is always 100% whole bunch. Sees a bit more new oak as well, so 50% new oak. It's a very interesting sort of sub-region of the Mornington Peninsula. It's got a stewy fruit character that you probably don't see in the sort of more higher altitude Red Hill Merrix vineyards. And so it's actually, when it's destemmed, it's actually not that pretty. It's a little bit sort of stewy, but so back in 2009 we started experimenting with whole bunches with it, and, you know, progressively working up from, you know, 5, 10, 15 to, we just feel like 100% whole bunch works with it really well.
Yep.
It's got the ripe tannins that really work well with it, and it just sort of brightens the fruit a little bit. So yeah, they're worlds apart in winemaking and obviously region. Yeah,
and I'd say that also works texturally very differently as well. The perhaps the bunches, but as you said, the fruit profile here, because it's not a chewy wine by any stretch of the imagination, but compared to the Gippsland, where you have that very kind of quite fine fruit look and that very long sort of, we were just saying, almost Nebbiolo-like tannin through the mouth. This one has a sort of slightly broader palate in a way, but with a really interesting sort of firmer core in a way to it for my mind. So there's as I say, not a chewiness, but there's a real substance in the mid palate that I really enjoy in this wine all the time, and it does stretch out obviously with both the tannins and with the acidity in this wine. Yeah,
look, I think the whole bunch is a real factor in that. We use quite a, so we actually ferment it, I guess, in a carbonic maceration style. So it gets locked up for a week before we open it up. Then it gets pumped over for another week, and it really just keeps fermenting for 6 weeks. So right. it'll end up probably spending between 4 and 6 weeks depending on the vintage. This wine spent 6, as did the 21, which we've just bottled. And I think that really helps. I think that really helps build some mid palate structure as well. but yeah, no, I agree. I think it's definitely coarser, and I feel like it's probably a little bit more designed for aging.
Yeah.
Because there is a real density to the palate.
Yeah, real density, but at the same time, and I don't know whether it's got anything to do with the way it's sort of bound up and spent so long, but it always feels very sort of tightly bound in a way, like, you know, if you know what I mean. All the elements are there. It's a very complex wine. It's got kind of earthy, spicy, herbal notes, as well as, you know, really quite firm, spicy cherry fruit, a little tiny bit of that Mornington Peninsula blood orange thing going on, but in a really sort of rounded, seamless core. I think this one always.
Yeah, I think I mean, when you're tasting the fermenter, it's looking, you know, it has that bright forward fruit in the first few weeks, but a couple of weeks after that, and, you know, like probably a bit of foot stomping every 2 or 3 days, you really start seeing these spices come out of it, and which is what I think is the mission statement for this wine. We just want it to be layered.
Yeah. Well, it is. It's beautiful. So this is as I said, the 2019 single vineyard Red Hill Pinot Noir from Onannon, from Will Byron, from Sam Middleton and Kaspar Hermann. Unfortunately, they're not here with us in the vineyard, but as I say, it's a beautiful day. We're going to go and watch the eagles and look at the ocean over in the background. But in the meantime, I hope you get hold of these wines. They're out now. And yeah, thanks a lot, Will.
Thanks, Ed. Cheers.